You're watching CGTV, Community Government Television, Channel 11, Pitkin County, City of Aspen, and Town of Snowmass Village.
The City of Aspen, established in 1881, has over 220 full-time employees, a number that swells to more than 425 with the addition of seasonal and temporary workers. Organized into more than 20 departments, the City of Aspen provides major amenities like parks, a rec center, and open space, and services like utilities and police and Kids First to its residents and visitors. From the golf course to the Community Development Department, the Wheeler Opera House to the Parking Department, the City of Aspen and its employees strive to do the best job possible. A major goal of the city is keeping open communication between the government and the citizens. Welcome to City Matters, a show where the city does matter, and matters of the city are brought to you. Hello and welcome to City Matters. I'm Mitzi Rapkin, Community Relations Director for the City of Aspen, and on this show we talk all things city, and I am honored to be joined today by Sergeant Rick Magnuson.
Hi.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Rick is not only a sergeant, he is also a biker and an instructor for the International Police Mountain Bike Association. So we are going to talk about bike riding, biking in Aspen, bike safety, bike pedestrian, bike, car interfaces, all of that stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about.
So why don't you tell me first about your first bike?
I think I had a Schwinn when I was about 6 or 7, and it was one of those yellow. It was yellow and orange from the 70s colors, because I was in that era, and it had a banana seat. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it had this little a chrome back part where you could have a rider. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I ever had a rider, but really sweet bike.
Did it have a flag or tassels?
I don't think
tassels
so.
Tassels are probably more girly.
Yeah, I didn't have any of that. I was, but I was into Evel Knievel at the time, so I had this ramp in the backyard, and my brother and I would jump it over this. We built this jump.
Nice.
So yeah, that was my first bike, and I've been fond of bikes ever since, and I just love bikes, and so I ended up getting in this career, and they're like, well, what are you good at? I was thinking, well, not much, but I can bike, and so I became a bike instructor and a bike mechanic, and then so I have some level of expertise in this area.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's warm in Aspen. Whenever it's warm in Aspen, you see the two wheels come out, which is awesome. We have so many active bikers, and there's a lot of reasons to bike in Aspen. But I'm just wondering, from your perspective as a police, what do you see as the benefits of people biking? And what are maybe the areas we should, we'll get into that are maybe more you need to be more mindful of when you're biking in Aspen?
Yeah. For me, I think the best thing about bikes is it takes a car off the road. It is one of the city's goals to decrease our carbon footprint. Every time you get a car off the road, that just makes it better. We all know how congested it gets here, especially with cars. In July and August, it's packed with cars. So I really love that people are getting out of their cars. They can park for free, and secondarily, I think one of the best things is that you're getting exercise. So we have a lot of fit people in this town, and I think this just helps increase people's fitness levels. Even if you're not an expert biker, anyone can get on a bike and go to a meeting or the store. You just bring a backpack or get a rack on your bike, and so I think to me, I in the summer almost never use my car, and I'll commute, and I find that it's rewarding. You get to see things that you don't see in a car. You get to go on the back roads. You smell things you wouldn't necessarily smell. It's just a more enjoyable way to commute.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like you're not using gas. You don't have to pay for parking. You can fit into places where you need to go. So, there's a lot of rules to the road that people might not be familiar with biking. Sometimes you see people biking on sidewalks, which isn't always the best, or they're biking the wrong way against traffic. What are some general rules of biking in Aspen?
Well, there's a lot of specific rules, but in general, if you don't remember much from this conversation, one thing to really remember, I think, is that treat yourself as a vehicle when you're on a bike. In other words, if you're unsure of how to react or move about, picture yourself in a car. What would you do in a car? Because as a cyclist, according to the state law, we have the same rights and responsibilities as motor vehicles. So you do need to signal. You need, if you left, right, and stop, you need to do those. If you're coming up to stop signs, we'll get into this later. We have a little nuanced ordinance called stop as yield, but you need to stop at stop signs, stop lights. You need to use proper lane usage. Of course, not ride against traffic. There's equipment. So without getting into the weeds too much, generally, think about yourself as you were driving a car. That's how you need to operate your bike. You can actually get tickets on a bike as you could in a car. Almost all the same tickets apply. We don't enforce like that. We try to educate bikers, but it is possible to even get a speeding ticket or a stop sign violation ticket, a stoplight violation on a bike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things you've seen people doing on bikes that you just wish you could say to everyone, if anything else, don't do this?
To me, I think it's riding the wrong way on one-way streets is really dangerous, especially Galena Street. I see a lot of people going north on Galena, and that's a one-way street. And it's very dangerous because when people are backing out of those angle spots, they're not looking your direction. They don't expect a vehicle to come from that direction. So I think that's really dangerous, and I wish people would stop that. If I could add one or two more, I would think, in my opinion, riding on the sidewalks and the malls, please don't do that. They're not designed for cyclists, so the engineers that designed them are assuming the people are moving at walking pace. And if you're on a bike on the sidewalk, you're putting people in danger, including yourself. So I think that's really important. Thirdly, I think having the proper equipment at night. Sometimes I work night shifts, and I see a lot of riders that just don't have the proper equipment, and you can't see them, and it's incredibly dangerous. So just so you're aware, if you have riding at night, you need to have a white light visible from 500 feet. You need to have a red reflector in the rear visible from 600 feet. So those are the minimum requirements. I suggest that people wear a headlamp or a pretty bright light at the minimum, because it's just really dangerous.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Those are the things that really strike me as being important. And then when you're on the path, be polite. Say to people, I know a lot of people are wearing earbuds now, and they might not hear you, but always announce that you're passing. On your left, simple like that. Or may I pass on your right, or whatever you need to do, but communicate on the bike paths.
Yeah, so that's kind of almost a whole different protocol when you're on the Rio Grande, maybe, than on the road. You're sort of thinking about different things, and the main thing there, I think, is interactions with other bikers.
Yeah.
Rarely, but sometimes horses.
Sometimes, yeah.
And pedestrians. So what have you seen out there with the pedestrian bike interface in terms of safety, in terms of best practices, worst practices?
We're talking about bike paths now, or just
either one, but just when bikers and pedestrians share space.
Yeah. Well, I think there's two different things. First, let's talk about on the bike path. So I think communication is vital here. And so as I was saying, communicate what your intentions are. because bikers are traveling sometimes, 10 to 30 miles an hour, and a pedestrian's doing 3 miles an hour. So you really need to be in your lane and communicate what you're going to be doing. And if you're a pedestrian, that you have an obligation as well to be alert, because oftentimes people, even when they're alone, will walk in the middle of the bike path, kind of just assuming like no one's coming. It's my bike path. But people will bike past you. And so be alert if you're a pedestrian and a cyclist. And it requires us all to just get along, essentially, and be alert. So those are the things I see as common issues, and I've responded to many accidents on bikes, particularly down on Rio Grande Trail, where there's some curvy parts below the post office, where cyclists are going probably around 20, 25 miles an hour, and they're surprised by someone in their lane, sometimes a pedestrian, a dog, or another cyclist, and they panic, hit the front brake, and crash. So there's been some serious crashes. So you need to be alert about that and adjust your speed. Those are my general bike suggestions for on the bike path. And we'll maybe get into e-bikes later, but when it comes to just, let's say, the road, if you're a cyclist, again, treat yourself as you're driving a car, be courteous, and when it comes to a pedestrian, you need to yield to them. Even if they're in violation of a crosswalk violation, vehicles and bikes still need to yield. So you'll find a lot of pedestrians kind of cross where they shouldn't, aren't paying attention, or walking parallel to the sidewalk and doing things that really they shouldn't be doing legally either. So if you can pay attention to what they're doing and communicate, a lot of that comes from eye contact. I really highly suggest when you're on a bike, you make eye contact with whoever is your next threat. So when I teach biking to people, I always try to get them to think, where's the next threat? Is it the car coming this way? A car coming from behind? Is it a pedestrian that looks like they're going to cross? So if you can make eye contact with them and communicate that way, those are my suggestions for staying safe. And it requires all of us to hopefully pay attention to the rules. And I know in reality that doesn't happen, but if pedestrians and cars and cyclists communicate with each other and follow the rules, it works well. If one of those three is not following the rules, there's chances for injuries. And so that's what we want to avoid.
I think it can get confusing too. We have some new sharrows in Aspen.
Yeah.
So an example would be Hopkins by Restaurant Row, where it can be confusing, actually more confusing, I think, for cars, because the sharrow, the bike lane, isn't all the way on the right side of the road. It's it's not in the middle, but it's kind of a quarter of the way in. So what's the protocol for cars and bikers?
Yeah, that's a great question. So those sharrows look like lanes painted on the roads, and they have a biker in those lanes. They put them kind of out into the road, as you suggested, because that's kind of the buffer zone. We don't want bikes to ride really close to the right side of the road, because that's where cars are going to be entering and exiting when they park. So that's designed as the safe area for cyclists to ride. So we suggest you do ride in the sharrows or to the right side of the sharrow so that cars can come around you. And so for a vehicle, they are allowed to pass when it's safe to do so. So if there's a bike riding in the bike sharrow lane, you may not be able to pass until they get out of the way, because they are going to essentially kind of be in the middle of the road. So you need to wait till it's safe if you're a car. And so, again, it requires cooperation between the two of them. If you're a cyclist, though, and there's no one else around, you can move to the right side of that sharrow, and when there's no traffic, a car can get by you. But in the core, like you're talking about, where the speed is 20 miles an hour max, we like to tell cyclists, for their safety, to take the lane. So they might just be right in the middle of the road. They can do that as long as they're not obstructing traffic. And of course, in the core like that, the speeds are so low that most of the time cyclists are not obstructing traffic.
Yeah.
So,
And if you're in a car behind them, sometimes you just have to wait.
sometimes you have to wait. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the thing to do.
Yeah.
And you know, it's
Enjoy the scenery.
Aspen. You relax a little bit and let the biker be safe. Let them have that lane, and you pass it the next block.
Yeah.
You know, that's my suggestion.
So you had mentioned the stop as yield. It's something that was passed maybe in the last 8 years. I don't know, can't remember. But what is the rule for that? Because some bikers might think, oh, stop signs don't matter.
Yeah.
That's what the rule says.
Yeah, and I've stopped cyclists, and they said, "Yeah, we don't have to stop at these stop signs." And so I educated them many times. Here's the deal: we do have this law, and we commonly call it a stop as yield. Anytime you come to a stop sign in the city limits, you're allowed to treat it as a yield sign. That means if there's other traffic or pedestrians, you're going to have to stop. But if there's no one else around, you can roll through that on your bike. Now, that exemption does not apply to any street that abuts Highway 82, anyone. So in other words, everything on Main Street, Cooper going up the pass, Original, all of those you need to fully stop. The rest of them you can treat as a yield sign.
So if you're coming up Garmisch from like the Yellow Brick area, then you hit Main Street, you have to stop.
You have to stop. Mm-hmm.
You probably want to stop.
You do, yeah. Well, that's a logical, it's a reasonable law. Yeah, you don't want to just blow through that.
Yeah.
You know, there's 6 lanes of traffic. You can get killed right there.
Yeah.
So, but the rest of the ones, if you're cruising through the West End, does not give you the right to just treat all stop signs like they're not there, because they're a yield sign, which means slow down, safely proceed if there's nothing else in the intersection or coming towards the intersection.
So that makes me think about, areas, even in the West End, some of those directions, there's only stop signs going one of the 2 ways.
Yeah.
But we have some 4-way congested areas. One is by City Market. So what do you see with these areas with bikes, cars? Are they the most dangerous areas?
City Market in particular, that intersection of Cooper and Original, it is pretty dangerous. I've seen a lot of, I've been to a couple crashes there of bikes. Generally, it's the cyclist's fault there because they falsely assume that the stop signs don't apply to them, and they sneak by cars on the right and they go through the intersection, they get clipped. So those are dangerous intersections, and if cyclists can remember one thing from this whole conversation, is that you need to treat yourself as if you're driving a car. You would never do that in a car, I would hope.
Yeah.
So we want cyclists to follow the rules, and that's, it's not because we're being punitive at all. It's just we want people to be safe. I've been to a lot of serious bike crashes, and it really affects people's lives, sometimes long term. So, be cautious out there, and don't pass on the right. When it comes to that stop sign, especially if you're a cyclist, it applies to you.
Yeah. So, one of the great things about Aspen, we were mentioning these sharrows, is that we do have bike lanes. We have bike lanes coming, from Original down onto Main Street. We have the Hopkins Bike Ped Way, which is, you could take up the road.
Yeah, right. That Hopkins Bike Ped I guess entry to Aspen is great, and it's so well used. We do enforcement out there for cars that go more than 1 block. Cars are not allowed to be on there unless they're for 1 block only. But if you're a cyclist coming into or out of town, just take the whole lane. You don't need to worry about cars being there. They shouldn't be on that road. So you're not blocking anyone. So don't worry about it. Just take it. That's the way we want you to come into town.
Yeah. So you mentioned e-bikes, and they're just, we've just done some public input and Pitkin County, I think, is open to having some form of e-bikes on the trails.
Yeah.
What are you seeing with e-bikes and the rise of popularity with those?
Yeah, it's booming. It's just going off the charts right now. Many of the bike shops are renting them out, and I really like the fact that it's making more accessible for a lot of riders who necessarily wouldn't ride. Maybe middle-aged people who haven't been on a bike in 10 years. They're thinking, "Oh, this is cool. Let's get on an e-bike and go to Woody Creek Tavern or ride up to the Bells." You know, there's a lot of that going on now. So I like that concept, and I want to support that. But I think it needs to be done reasonably, and I like what the commissioners have decided, that they're going to allow Class 1 e-bikes on the bike pass, and that's allowed in the city as well. A Class 1 e-bike is something that will assist you up to 20 miles an hour while you're pedaling. These are not the e-bikes where you just turn the throttle. You have to pedal. So I think that's a good rule. I really support that, and I will add though that, you know, those e-bikes are kind of like mini motorcycles. You don't just jump on one and feel like, oh, I got this, it's a bike, because they can surprise you and they're powerful. So I suggest that you find someone who's sort of an expert or knows something about them and take a lesson, because they're not, if you haven't been on a bike in a while and you jump on there, they can be a little bit dangerous. And I will add also that those e-bikes are not allowed on dirt paths, dirt trails, like Sky Mountain Park or up in Hunter Creek on those single tracks. Are not allowed up there.
Yeah.
So
it is nice to see, though, the opportunities that it's offering people who might not have been on a bike in a long time.
I know. Yeah, I was even recently talking with our sheriff, Joe DeSalvo, and he's got this really great mountain bike he loaned me, and it's an e-bike, and it was amazing. I just thought it was kind of a game changer. Not for me, because I like to pedal, and that's fine. But he loves it, and I support that, and it's just opening it up to a lot of different riders.
Yeah.
Of all abilities.
Yeah, and a nice thing that people can do if they haven't ridden in a while and aren't into the e-bike is that we have the WeCycle.
Yeah.
So the WeCycle has stations all over town. The city has helped subsidize it, so anyone can use it for free for a half an hour. You just have to go on the WeCycle website and sign up and put in your credit card for if you go over a half an hour. But are you seeing an increase of people like rotating around town on these? And do you see any particular interests or issues related to that?
I wouldn't have the numbers behind that. It seems to me like they're very popular, and I don't know of any issues different than what we already talked about. Except those things are only going to be on paths mainly, and in the urban core, because you can only have them for half an hour unless you want to rent them for longer. But I love seeing the Wii bikes out there. I think it's a great program, and same rules apply as we just talked about.
Yeah.
Be safe on them. Follow the rules.
Yeah, they're great, and they're heavy, so you're not going to be. I wouldn't recommend taking them up Hunter Creek or anything.
Oh no, they're not that kind of bike. They're just good for pavement. You can't do wheelies on them. You can't go off jumps. Any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned earlier too, with if you're using WeCycles, if you're using e-bikes, if you're anything, no bikes on the pedestrian mall. It seems like that's an area that it's always been a rule, but that's like a sticky zone.
It does seem like that, and I will tell you that a lot of people miss the signs saying no, walk only. A lot of people disregard them, and then and it's not heavily enforced. So the way we don't have time to just station a police officer there all day and have people walk. But when we're out there, we do enforce that. Mainly it's through education, and we'll mention to the rider, hey, this is a no biking area, and the reason is there's kids, there's pets. This is a slow speed walking area. We don't want bikes on the mall, and so we just ask for compliance there. We rarely write tickets, but you could get a ticket for that. So not to be threatening at all, but I just want to ask for people to do the right thing and walk your bike on the mall. It's just safer for everyone. There's a lot of kids there, and again, dogs, and it's just not the best place to cycle.
Yeah. And what's nice is I think the city has made efforts to put bike racks at the entrance, on both sides of the mall. So there's a place that you can leave your bike.
That's a good point. Yeah. We really want people to cooperate with that rule, especially. And the sidewalks. Please don't ride on sidewalks or on the malls.
So with the bike racks and stuff, and now that it is bike season, what do you see at the end of season in terms of people leaving their bikes around? Or, you have an auction every year in May, and somehow you get these bikes. How do you get those bikes?
Yeah, we do. We seem to get around at least 100 bikes every May. And a lot of them, frankly, are just abandoned. They'll be left on the mall or on a bike rack somewhere, and then the Parks Department will put a tag on there and say, if you don't claim this in a week, we're going to take it. Of course, they only take it, unless someone claims it. And then if no one claims it, it goes in our bike auction, and we raise thousands of dollars every year, and that money goes back into the general fund. But we don't want to claim any bikes, we don't want to do that. But frankly, they're just abandoned, and we get a lot of bikes. Sometimes there's some really nice bikes, and there's a lot of junkers too, but it's really a fun event. So people love coming to our auction. Our auctioneer is one of our community response officers, Bobby Schaefer, and he's really good at it, and it's a fun event. So I wish we didn't have to do it, because I wish everyone claimed their own bike, but we do get a lot of bikes every year, just left around.
On the opposite end of the spectrum too, in terms of wanting people to ride their bikes and use that instead of cars, it's a good idea to lock your bike if you're going out for the evening. Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's a great topic, because I just spent $70 on a kryptonite lock for my personal bike. And yeah, I'm a cop and all that, and I see all the case reports coming in as stolen bikes. And we do get a lot of stolen bikes, but it's very rare that we get a stolen bike that's locked with a decent lock. So you can prevent that if you just use a lock. And I know Aspen is a safe place, but there is a fair amount of property crime. Most of the property crime we have here is a crime of opportunity. So if you don't lock your car, someone might open the door and see your wallet in there and take it. Same thing with your bike. If you don't lock it, it's very possible you'll walk away at 2 in the morning. If you leave it out in front of Eric's or Belly Up or some of the popular bars, sometimes people take them home. So if you lock your bike, I really recommend you just do that, because then there's a peace of mind that it's going to be there.
Right.
So, like I said, I just spent $70 on a lock for my bike. I recommend that everyone locks their bike.
All right. So I think we covered a lot of good bike topics. If people are interested, they can get more information from the police department, the parks, and even engineering departments at the city are also really interested in helping people have a safe bike experience. So if you have any feedback, you can reach Rick at the police department.
Yeah.
Any final parting words for bikers?
Yeah, just have fun out there. It's a great way to see town. Get through traffic easy. No free parking. Get some endorphins going. I think it's the best way to see town when the weather's great.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mitzi.
And thank you for tuning in.
You're watching CGTV, Community Government Television, Channel 11, Pitkin County, City of Aspen, and Town of Snowmass Village.
The City of Aspen, established in 1881, has over 220 full-time employees, a number that swells to more than 425 with the addition of seasonal and temporary workers. Organized into more than 20 departments, the City of Aspen provides major amenities like parks, a rec center, and open space, and services like utilities and police and Kids First to its residents and visitors. From the golf course to the Community Development Department, the Wheeler Opera House to the parking department, the City of Aspen and its employees strive to do the best job possible. A major goal of the city is keeping open communication between the government and the citizens. Welcome to City Matters, a show where the city does matter and matters of the city are brought to you.